But enough about what we need to do to make it work. Now we'll talk about some of the more interesting things. So what's next? And I've got my top 2 things about what's coming up for IoT. Number 1, and I hate the acronym, so I apologize, but it's the emergence of the IoT OTT. So the IoT over-the-top providers. Now we saw this in mobile where companies came in and were able to leverage the infrastructure that was in place and the assets that were in place. And we're going to see the same thing now with IoT. Because we have so much information, but what we don't have is intelligence around that information. And I think there's a few companies that are doing it right now that I find very interesting. One of them focuses on the video analytics space. And what I like is we've got cameras everywhere in Singapore, but they're not always the latest cameras. You've got some HD cameras, some will be some older, cheaper, pixelated ones. They can combine all that surveillance information into a single platform. And I like that because it means we're going to take assets that are already there and drive value out of them. Next one are on smart buildings. If you look at something like Capitol Tower in Singapore, you're probably talking about 150,000 sensors in that building. That's a lot of information. What you actually want is someone who can come in, and there's, I think, a company here this week called Demand Logic, who I talked about last year. They do some really cool stuff about aggregating all these different building management systems into a single platform. And you can do that across multiple buildings. So if you think of somewhere like Singapore, where they own the vast majority of the buildings here, there's a lot of opportunity to not go buy new assets, but to get the information off the assets that are already there and then drive intelligence out of it. And the final one is around manufacturing. There's a really cool AI startup out of Silicon Valley called Falkonry. And what they do is work with the operational technology vendors to take the data they're capturing and flip it around to deliver a quick ROI. They're using machine learning and deep learning to improve high-end manufacturing process. All these companies are software-based. It's all as a service. It's one of those things, if you don't get a return in 2 or 3 months, they say, fine, we'll give you your money back. And I love that concept. What they're going to give you is value. We've got a lot of assets. I want value next. Next thing, the year of the low-power WANs. Now, I talked about this a bit last year, and it's all kicked off in the last 12 months, and it's getting quite exciting. This sounds technical, but I'll try and make it as simple as possible on this. A low-power WAN is a dedicated IoT network. Our existing networks they don't have the capacity to handle the number of things that we want to connect. What it also is, it's a very low-cost deployment. So even if you run it on a mobile network or create your own, these things don't cost that much because they only send a little bit of information over very long distances. So you don't need that much base stations to actually set up. The cost savings is important for anybody who's in a smart city space or a customer, an enterprise customer, because the starting points on these are typically 90% less than what you would pay for a traditional M2N connection on LTE or 3G network or 4G network. So that helps really spur the business case. And what you get is market demand. Smart cities, if they're ever going to reach their potential, need these low-power networks because we need hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of applications to actually drive the value. But the challenges around low-power WANs is which path do you follow? Because there's really 3 competing forces in this. The first one is narrowband IoT, the second one is LoRa, and the third is Sigfox. And they're all backed by different groups of companies, but they're all starting to develop a significant presence in the marketplace. And what you need to know about these guys are, number 1, the operators. So if you're on an NB-IoT, this is going to be run by your traditional mobile operators. So you'll see Singtel, StarHub, and M1 launching it here, SKT and KT in Korea, et cetera, et cetera. But when you go to LoRa, this is an unlicensed spectrum, so anybody can become an operator. You've got fixed operators like Telekom Malaysia and Tata Comms doing it. You've got mobile operators doing it like SK Telecom. You've got cities that are deploying their own LoRa networks, and then enterprises where they might have a remote site to deploy it there as well. Now, Sigfox is another different model because they create their own operators in countries. And this becomes challenging them because they're in 32 countries now, and they're going to expand to 60. So what's the coverage? NB-IoT will just be like what you have for your normal mobile network. But the key thing is it's only going to deploy in the latter half of this year. LoRa can be by a site, city, or country. Sigfox gives you the opportunity to go global because it will work on any of their networks around the world. But this is the most important part, the backers. On narrowband IoT, it's the chipset manufacturers like Intel and Qualcomm that are backing it, and the software vendors that sell the solution to the operators. When you look at LoRa, yeah, they got hardware and platform guys, but they've also got systems integrators. Now that means that these integrators, like IBM, figure out how they can actually leverage this to start driving the solutions. And then in Sigfox, they're adding even more because they've just done some big partnerships with Bosch, to start driving solutions into the manufacturing space. The guys like AWS are in there with them, Microsoft. So they're expanding that ecosystem outside of the chipset and outside of the connectivity. They're getting all those component players together that deliver the solutions. And the latest on this one, Cisco just announced with Jasper they'll support NB-IoT. Tata Com's the big announcement was they're supporting LoRa in India. And then Telefonica broke ranks with the rest of the operators and did a global partnership with Sigfox. So that's your snapshot, but this is the real important part. What do you need to ask of these guys? If it's NB-IoT, are you really going to deploy it this year, or are you going to wait until 5G comes out? If you went to Mobile World Congress, or if you heard the news, there wasn't a lot around NB-IoT. It was all 5G. So I'm curious to see whether or not we're going to see significant deployments. And we might in just the developed countries and not the developing ones. They might wait for 5G. And then can operators actually sell those solutions? Next slide on LoRa. Will SK Telecom's launch succeed? And now that's important because SK Telecom did the best product launch I've ever seen from a mobile operator when they launched LoRa. They came out with 6 different price plans. They came out with 20 different products and services at launch. They own the customers. They've got the services capability. If they can make it successful, I'll stay bullish on LoRa. If not, I'm going to look for different use cases for that type of a model. And what LoRa also needs is that next wave of backers. Is it going to be the operational technology companies that come in and work with them? And on Sigfox, it's can they scale fast enough? Growing from 32 operators worldwide to 60 in 1 year is a big ask of any company. So how are they going to be able to do that? And then also, are they going to be able to drive non-connectivity revenue streams? Because you're creating an operation there to actually finish it up. You need to end out getting really low-cost products in there. You need to do services on the top of that to make your money. So what's the tipping point? It's low-power WANs. And I say this because in the last 12 months, everywhere across the IoT ecosystem, you've seen people get involved, whether it's the operators, the hardware vendors, platform providers, but now the companies like Bosch, Accenture, Amazon, Total, EDF, energy companies getting involved. Everyone's really getting involved in this and driving the market forward. And what's happening is it's not just that supply side. We're bringing together supply and demand. We're bringing the hardware, connectivity, software, services, and that operational technology side to the table. And then what we have is all this pent-up demand in industries like agriculture, what you end up having with your energy companies, leveraging it for smart grids. It's going to be manufacturing and the logistics company that track products throughout the supply chain and your smart cities. So they've all come together, and this will create that tipping point. A number of small announcements coming together, everyone's competing in that same space. But success won't be easy. The market's fragmented, a lot of vendors with a lot of different messages going out to market. There's still limited use cases. Like I said, we need tens of thousands of use cases, not 1 or 2. Skills, this is always the challenge. Not only the people to develop those use cases, but to go and implement and support them. And finally, this race to zero. The Sigfox operator in Singapore, Unibiz, launched a few weeks back. Their cheapest connection price is $1 per year per connection. So that's very low. So where are they going to make their money? And where will operators make their money going forward?